Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Will before I present my proposal, let me introduce myself. My name is Mustalifa. I will present a proposal with a title, The Effectiveness of Using Scientific Calculators on Mathematics Student Learning Outcomes in Matrix Grade 11 of Senior High School. Contents the proposal. The first is Chapter 1, Introduction. The second is Chapter 2, Literature Review. And the third is Chapter 3, Research Method. Okay, the first is Chapter 1, Introduction. Background. Mathematics is one of the compulsory subjects at the formal educational level. However, mathematics is one of subjects considered difficult by most students, and this is due to its abstract nature, full of numbers, formula, and requires practice. The teacher here has a major role in providing knowledge or cognitive attitudes and value or effective and skills psychomotor to students. Whereas in the learning process, the main problem is the method and media of learning facilities that are in accordance with the subject matter of the subject, which are considered effective and relevant in the delivery of learning material in class. Mathematics lessons that carry out at the elementary and intermediate levels usually avoid using calculators. Many teachers think that calculators are one of the causes of low students' learning outcomes. The result of these assumptions is that most students do not understand the basic operation of the calculators. Generally, they cannot calculate exponent with a calculators. Most of them only understand the basic operation of calculators, which include addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Based on these problems, the result choose scientific calculators to be used as a medium for learning mathematics in matters for class 11. Therefore, the research conducted a study in the title The Effectiveness of Using Scientific Calculators on Mathematics Student Learning Outcomes in Matrix Grade 11 of Senior High School. Research problem and research purpose. The first is a research problem. There are four research problems of the proposal, namely, the first is how are the students' learning outcomes on the matrix material before and after being taught using scientific calculators in class 11 senior high school. The second is how do students' learning activity during the teaching and learning process take place using scientific calculators in class 11 senior high school. The third is how is the effectiveness of learning matrix material using scientific calculators on the mathematics learning outcomes of the matrix material in class 11 senior high school students. The last is how much influence is the learning media using scientific calculators on the learning outcomes of matrix material in class 11 senior high school students. And the next is research purpose. There are four research purposes of the proposal, namely, the first is to find out students' learning outcomes on the matrix material before and after being taught using a scientific calculators in class 11 senior high school. The second is for students' learning activity during the teaching and learning process take a place using a scientific calculators in matrix 11 senior high school. And the third is knowing the effect of the instructional media using a scientific calculators on the mathematics learning outcomes of the matrix material in class 11 senior high school. And the last is to find out how much influence the learning media using scientific calculators have on the learning outcomes of matrix material in class 11 senior high school. Research benefit. The benefit of this research is, the first is for teacher as motivation, input, and consideration for teachers to provide students learning outcomes, learn mathematics. The second is for students, namely A. Increase motivation and students' learning outcomes in participating in learning activity. B. Introducing technology in the form of software that will make it easier for students to master the material being taught. The third is for researchers, namely A. Gaining experience in applying mathematics learning using computer as learning media, which can be applied later. B. Providing information for researchers as a prospective teacher in order to select and use appropriate instructional media in learning activity. C. Knowing the effectiveness of learning using scientific calculators on students' learning outcomes. The second is Chapter 2, Literature Review. Literature review. The first is learning media and scientific calculators. Learning media is one of the intermediaries to clarify or sharpen the mathematical concept that will teach. And scientific calculators is a type of electronic calculators usually but not always handled, designed to calculate problems in science, engineering, and mathematics. They have completely replaced to slide in rule in traditional application and are widely used in educational and professional settings. The second is students' learning outcomes. Learning outcomes indicate the learning achievement of students. While learning achievement is an indicator of the degree of change in a student behavior. These learning outcomes will usually be seen after an evaluation of the learning process. The third is matrix. Matrix is a collection of numbers arranged in a row and columns. Numbers arranged in a row and columns are called matrix elements. Matrices are often written in capital letters. The numbers of row and columns of the matrix is called the matrix order. The fourth is relevant research finding, and the last is hypothesis. The research hypothesis is the first, there is an and effect of the effectiveness of learning media using scientific calculators on students' learning outcomes in the matrix material for grade 11 of senior high school. And the second is, there is no effect of the effectiveness of learning media using scientific calculators on students' learning outcomes in the matrix material for grade 11 of senior high school. The third is Chapter 3, Research Method. Research type. The type of research is quantitative study with a pre-experiment approach. Research place and time. This research will be conducted at grade 11 of senior high school. This research was conducted in autumn semester. Population and sample. The population in this study were all students of grade 11 of senior high school. The sampling technique used in students senior high school is random sampling. Research design. The design used in this study was the one group pre-test, post-test design. Research variable. In the study, two variables have been determined, namely the dependent variable and the independent variable. The dependent variable in this study is mathematics learning outcomes of grade 11 of senior high school, as well as students' activity and students' response as additional variable that must be considered. The independent variable in this study is learning in grade 11 of senior high school. Research instrument. There are four research instruments of the proposal, namely, the first is learning outcomes test. The test is used to determine the learning outcomes in grade 11 students of senior high school in solving math problems consisting of the pre-test and post-test. The test instrument is in the form of description questions. The test is given to students. Scoring of student test results use a scale depending on the weight of the items. The second is learning implementation of observation sheet. The learning implementation observation sheet aims to see the implementation of learning and to find out how well the learning is carried out. The third is student activity observation sheet. This instrument is used to obtain data about the activity in grade 11 of senior high school during the learning process. Retrieval of student activity data was carried out during the teaching and learning process. And the last is students' response questionnaire. The students' response questionnaire was designed to determine the response in grade 11 students of senior high school to learning mathematics. Data collection technique. There are two data collection techniques of the proposal, namely A, the data on learning outcomes were taken by given tests, namely in the form of a pre-test and post-test in grade 11 students of senior high school. Pre-test is given at the beginning of the meeting while a post-test is given at the end of the meeting. B. Data on the feasibility of learning were obtained using the mathematics learning implementation observation sheet. Data analysis technique. The first is learning outcomes. In analyzing students' learning data, use descriptive, statistical analysis, and inferential analysis. The second is a student activity sheet. Data from observation of students' activity during learning activity were analyzed by looking at the average of active students on each indicator in the observation rules. The third is implementation of learning. The data analysis technique on the feasibility on the learning model use average analysis. And the last is students' response. In analyzing students' response data, descriptive statistical analysis and inferential statistical analysis were used. That is the presentation of my research proposal. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.